That would help. Thank you. Thank you, AJ. I'm Ken Peterson from QuestionPro. I lead our experience function, which includes thinking about customer experience, employee experience, and patient experience. Today, I'm very fortunate to have with me Matt Layton and Sam Harris joining me to talk about customer experience at LegalShield, where we talk about the next generation of CX research. Now, full disclosure, LegalShield is a QuestionPro client, but they have some very interesting things to talk about and with their CX initiatives that they're leading. So just a quick, for those of you that haven't attended with me before, I have 20 years customer experience, and I'll jump into the rest of this a little bit with a little more context. But right now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to hand it over. I'll start with Matt and let him introduce himself.
Hey, thank you, Ken. This is Matt Layton with LegalShield. And first of all, I wanted to thank you guys for having us on today, because as you'll see when we get moving, right, Sam and I are really excited to talk about this type of topic. But again, I'm Matt Layton, LegalShield. I've been here for 21 years now, Vice President of Analytics. And really within that analytics, I really got started kind of in the customer experience, customer satisfaction arena due to the nature of our product, right? And the subscription nature of it and the short-term subscription, right? So we don't have long-term contract periods, so it's month to month. So customer experience, customer satisfaction is extremely important. Membership retention is extremely important. So for most of the 20 years that I've been here, those are some of the areas that I've focused on most heavily.
Thank you, Matt. And Sam, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, my name is Sam Harris. Been at LegalShield, started as an intern, as you can see, then became the BI analyst for legal services starting in 2018, with most of my job kind of pertaining to customer experience, as most of what I do is looking at the law firms that we have and ensuring that the service they provide is what we want it to be. So through that, I also adopted just the survey systems, and I can have the relationship with QuestionPro and stuff like that. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. So I mentioned I'd jump into this a little bit. If you're hearing me for the first time, I'm really what someone would call invested into customer experience. I actually came from an operations background, worried about logistics, inventory levels, sales forecasts. My degree is in operations research management sciences. It's very in tune to taking all the different numbers and all the different levers, and how can we influence the outcomes? And I think that's what appealed to me when it came to customer experience. It's what drew me in. It appeals to my operational side. But I think customer experience is one of those things that's really easy to understand, but it's really difficult to execute on. In a straightforward business, you usually have a set of touch points and known ways that the customers interact with you. However, the business at LegalShield is different in many ways, and Matt had already alluded to that. I mean, like insurance companies and car dealerships and so many other, there's many of these B2B to C kind of interactions. The customers are really customers of your customers. Sounds easy enough, and then you factor in that a lot of the services are being provided by a network of experts that don't necessarily work for LegalShield. So everything hinges on that customer experience, and you only have a little bit of time to control that. And so, I mean, no one's here to listen to me, so let me, I gave my little description, but I'll have my guests describe a little bit more about LegalShield and talk about the challenges that you are facing on the CX front.
Sure, thanks, Ken. And like I mentioned earlier, we are a subscription model business, and you kind of hit on it, right? So really, the main job of LegalShield, right, is we connect an individual with a need to a expert who can solve that problem for them, right? So we sell and market legal expense plans, and also reputation management and identity theft protection. So we're really the middleman that sits there, right? So members or customers come to us, they purchase a subscription or a membership to our service, pay us a monthly fee, and then benefits are available to them, right? Whether it's the legal benefits or the identity theft and reputation management benefits. And our business is kind of built upon what we call a CPA LTV model. So cost per acquisition up front, how much does it cost us to bring a new member on board and get them subscribed to our service? And then really the value that we get out of that person is based upon the longevity of their membership. So LTV, lifetime value. How long can we keep that member subscribed, paying monthly, satisfied with the service? So we like to say a member that, you know, is paying us for the service, is using the service, and is satisfied with the service, that's a valuable long-term member to us. And really our entire business is set up along the lines of we only win right when the member's happy, when the member's using the service, and when the member stays with us for a long period of time. And it's interesting, one of the ways that we pay those, what we call provider law firms, the lawyers that are providing the service that our members are requesting, they don't get paid on a per usage basis or billable hours, right? We pay our provider law firms on a capitated basis, right? So at the end of every single month, all of our law firms get paid based upon the number of active members in their areas of responsibility. So whether they may have serviced 0 members that month, we're going to write them a check X amount times all the active members in your area of responsibility. And I think what that does is it focuses the mind of those attorneys on just exactly what we're talking about here today: customer experience, increasing customer satisfaction, creating happy members. Every time a member calls, how can we service that member to the best of our ability, right? Quickly and efficiently and professionally, and create a great outcome for that member, so that they immediately see the value in having, you know, an attorney in the palm of their hand, right? So I can call or punch a single button in the mobile app at any time and be connected to someone who I know is going to help me solve the problem of the challenges that I'm having in my life at the time. So our business model is highly leveraged against that customer satisfaction, member experience. And that's why it's really important for us to know what that member's thinking or what that member feels each time they come to us for a question, right? They have a problem in their life, they have a legal issue, they've got their identity stolen. We want to be here to help them, right? And we want them to know and believe and have confidence that, you know, we will answer quickly, we will provide the services necessary, we will remedy whatever issue they're having, so that they can have that peace of mind and go back to their life and, you know, not have to worry about it, right? Because we're here to solve them. And really it's important because of that subscription basis of our business model. There's really, what I see is 2 major reasons why it's important for us to survey our members, understand what they think, feel, and know at the time that they get the service, right? So one, member satisfaction is what we call it, right? So how can we service our members so that they're happy as possible whenever that service is completed, and that they keep the membership long term, right? So we're extremely focused on how do we increase the satisfaction of our members. Again, that's why we survey, and that's why those responses are important. On the second hand, right, we can then also use those member survey responses to go back to our provider law firms, our licensed professional investigators on the identity theft and reputation management side, and we can show them kind of, these are some of the pain points the members are having, right? And we've actually implemented, and Sam's been very instrumental in this, we've actually designed and implemented kind of customer service type training for our provider law firms, right? Because we're certainly not experts in the law ourselves, right? That's why we contract those services out to our provider law firms. But I think what we are experts is that customer service, right? Is that connection between someone who has an issue and someone who's the expert and can solve it. So using the results that we get back from our surveys, we've been able to create, really important and valuable trainings for our provider law firm side that kind of talks to them about customer service, listening, providing detailed explanations to the members. And that in and of itself has also increased that customer satisfaction, that member satisfaction, which in turn increases the longevity or the retention, the lifetime value of our membership. And again, that's how we create more value for our company. So kind of in a nutshell, that's the summary of why we think surveys are extremely important, and a little bit of how we use them to help on the customer side as well as on the provider side.
Sam, is there anything that you'd like to add on to that?
I think you hit the nail right on the head. Yeah, just the emphasis on being subscription based. We can't just sell it to you once and call it good. We have to constantly ensure that the service is there, that not only it's just, I need it for one thing, it's something that's worth paying a subscription for consistently because they see the consistent and long-term value in it. But yeah, I think other than that, Matt, give a perfect description.
Yeah, I mean, if Netflix stopped providing any new content, they would also lose their subscription. So similarly, you have to keep up to date with what you're offering and be able to make it seem valuable on a month-to-month basis. So, you sort of talked about the reasoning behind, and then, I'll talk a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the, who you're talking to when you survey and why you chose that. I mean, everyone's a customer in this case. You're the subscribers are customers. The attorneys that you're dealing with are customers. So when you look at all the avenues and you want to measure surrounding basically the contacts and being able to the interactions, seems like what seems like it should be common. Most overlook the opportunity to engage with their customers based on even interactions within an app, for example. Surveys go to referrals, service providers, post-consultation customers. Why did you decide to take that route first versus other ways to deploy CX, like maybe just a contact center or a relationship study? I'll start with you, Sam.
Yeah, so one of the big reasons we wanted to move to QuestionPro in the first place is this idea of being able to do in-app surveys and really maintain a consistent experience for the member, right? Because right now, when you want to use the service, if you need to do a will questionnaire, or if you need to submit a traffic ticket, or do a document review, or just call your law firm, that's all through the app. So by surveying in the app, we kind of almost close the loop. That's not the correct word, but we have a complete experience all in one spot, which will help maintain consistency for the member. And then long-term, it also allows us to dive deeper into like touch point surveys and stuff like that. Right now, we send an email at the end of the service because our old provider didn't have that capabilities to do in-app surveys, but now you click the button to submit a ticket. We can now say, how was your experience with that immediately? They don't have to leave the app. They don't have to wait for an email to get sent out, or if they call the provider, how was your consultation? That's the first step in any service with us, is a consultation, so we can really break down and better understand the different touch points in our service, and from there identify the more specific pain points in our service. So that's all comes from the member focused experience all within the app.
Matt, anything you want to add on to that in terms of how the feedback is currently used at this stage?
Sure, and I think Sam, said it perfectly, right? You mentioned call centers, emails, mobile app. We survey, or we have those touch points all the way around, and then we do generate feedback from kind of each one of those. The current focus is around, like Sam was talking about, how can we either through the mobile app or through email how can we immediately reach out to a member as soon as that service has been initiated or finished, right? We don't necessarily want to worry about calling out to a member. We like to talk about how can we interact with a member or a customer on their own terms, right? What's the best way they like to be spoken to or corresponded with? And we want to try to find that within all of our data, right? What's the best way to communicate with a member? And we have really good responses on email surveys. We were working towards and working on the kind of push notifications and immediate access through the mobile app. Again, in our experience, we get the best results and the best input and feedback back from our customers when we're able to, one, reach out to them in a form that they're most comfortable with responding, and two, as soon as possible or as close to that touch point that we're surveying that occurred, right? So a majority of the survey responses and the majority of the customer service experience reporting that we're doing here, especially with the QuestionPro program, is around accessing the membership benefits. So as soon as a customer or a member calls their provider law firm, or they call in for some of the reputation management or identity theft services, whenever that item is finished or closed or resolved, that's the immediate point in time we want to reach out to them and thank them for their usage, thank them for being a member, and then offer them the ability to give us feedback.
And I love that. I mean, you mentioned something, reaching out to them on their terms. I mean, and that's what's beautiful about it, because you're engaging them in a conversation in the way they want to be engaged. And I think that's one of those, that's the thing that stood out at me when we started talking about this. And,
yeah, and I think we can all understand is whether we like or dislike getting telephone calls from random numbers, whether it's a survey or someone trying to sell something to me. So one, we're not really interested in trying to proactively dial out to our members and then try to get them on the phone to answer a list of survey questions, right? And it's not that we don't do that when they call into us. There are some questions that we ask, but instead of like proactive call outs to ask some of these questions and do some of these surveys, we found that we get better results through email, through the mobile app. And two, I think the members or customers probably in a better frame of mind when they're answering those responses.
Yeah, definitely important for their turns. And I was going to jump ahead to the next part. This is I know we at QuestionPro execute perfectly, so there's no complaints there. But I've always talked about CX as a never-ending journey. Some people say, oh, once you launch, and launching can be a painful process. But a lot of people feel like you get to that launch point and you're like, oh, I'm done. And no, it's really cyclical. Year one, you feel your way around, you get some data, some insights, perhaps start responding to closed loop feedback more efficiently. Year two, you look at the data in a little more detail, looking at different segments across multiple time periods. You start to see trends year over year, things like that, linking it to business outcomes where it's possible. And then sort of year three, I always say the next thing is the business is evolving, the economy is evolving. Sometimes it evolves a lot faster. And you start to recognize gaps in what you're measuring, what you're analyzing, and what you're providing to the customers. And so you start to make the changes for the next 3 years, and it just keeps going in that cycle. I mean, ultimately, it's easy to make a plan like that, and then a pandemic hits and completely alters everything that you were trying to do and trying to accomplish. But if you were to think about your goals for the CX program, the business, and the impact that you want to have on your industry, what do you expect will happen? Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so we're coming at this at a little bit different perspective than I think maybe that your question alludes to. But so we've been doing this similarly to how we use QuestionPro, but Sam talked about some of the reasons we moved over to you guys. But one of the pain points from my perspective, and I'll let Sam respond with a little more detail. I'm going to hit more high level, right? So we've got 10 plus years of this type of customer experience, customer survey, customer satisfaction scores. One of the really cool projects that Sam built probably about a year ago now is that he built our own internal algorithm to create a member satisfaction score, right? So we have member satisfaction scores on the company total level, down to the state level, down to the zip code level, to the provider law firm level, all the way down to the individual attorney level, right? So what do the members, what's the member satisfaction score of the person using an attorney, right? People that live in the States, people that, even request specific areas of law, right? So we went really deep in the detail on how we measure customer satisfaction for a wide range of variables. And and I'm not gonna say it was a pain point, but one of the concerns I have, right, is when you've got 10 plus years of longitudinal history, and you've got all your stats in line, all your data is correlated perfectly, and now we move to a new vendor. The concern is then, do you break the correlation of your data, right? Is the historical tail of your information no longer valid since you moved to a new vendor? And I mean, the last thing we would want to do is cause you or whoever the new vendor is to fit in the same box of the old vendor that we were trying to get out of, right? So kind of some of those challenges is how do you move to a better vendor with more tools, that has more capabilities to do more analysis and create more intelligence, but also protect the integrity of something that we've been working on 10 plus years, that we've got a lot of track history, and we know month to month within any of those variables, are we improving, or did we go backwards? Did something happen to hurt the scores? So probably high level, big picture, that was my main concern kind of coming into this, is just how do we protect the integrity of our data long term, moving to a new vendor and kind of creating a new process here.
And it's definitely a challenge, because I mean, even something as simple as a different look on the survey, a different the different color theme, just a lighter blue versus a darker blue can subconsciously affect what the rating is.
Yeah, absolutely. So it isn't even about kind of the different questions, right? The email or the push notification could look different. The questions on the screen could be set up differently. So aside from what the answers were, right, all of those variables kind of affect whether someone's going to view it, right, whether someone's even going to open it, whether someone's going to take any time to answer, whether they're going to abandon halfway through, whether they're going to get to the end and hit submit, and then we actually get the results. So kind of all of those things are initially concerned to us as we're moving over, is how can we reach out to as many people possible, right? How can we keep our engagement up on the surveys? How can we keep the conversion rate or the submission buttons high, so that then our results are representative of the entire population?
Sam, anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, excuse me. So yeah, your question was kind of like, what are your goals for CX? What are your goals for the business and stuff like that? And we talked about this a little bit earlier, how our goal, we're a subscription-based business. Our goal is to give a good service that is deemed valuable to the member. Our company was created out of seeing a inequality in the world where justice wasn't really seeming to be equal, that people with more access to legal services have a better chance of or have a step above everyone else. So like with that as our idea, as our goal for our business, to give that service, is to create that equality. You bring in CX, and CX is almost like a mirror. So allows us to be aware of the service that we provide. It allows us to be aware of how well we're meeting our goal of our business. And Matt talked about how we have MSAT down to the zip code level, and we have it by all these different variables, but all that does is help us see. It's like when you look in the mirror in the morning, you have like messy hair. The mirror doesn't help you comb your hair. It just allows us to see that we need to make a change there. So that's our goal of CX, is to allow us to understand pain points, see where we're failing, when our goal is to provide equal justice. If we're not doing it well, we need to know so we can fix it. So with that in mind, like the CX is allowing us to make those changes, and we can dig into things like Matt mentioned earlier, that when we have a negative experience, we ask questions. Where did the service fail almost? So like, how was your lawyer's explanation? How was he at listening? How is he at being knowledgeable in the subject? All those different things. And it allows us to collect this data that we can then assign courses. We have this huge course load of the courses that we created ourselves to make sure that we are providing the service that we market as, and we are meeting our goal, and we are creating that equality that we want to see in the world.
Yeah, and hey, and I think Sam hit on it perfectly and probably said it better than I even did, right? So CX and the customer experience and the information we receive back from these surveys, right? I mean, that's all good and nice, but the questions we ask ourselves is, what are we going to do about it, right? So what is the actionable intelligence we're going to create out of the responses that we receive from our members to, you know, make the attorneys more responsive to legal issues, maybe have some more compassion for someone on the phone that's having a hard time, right? Maybe raise a level of not necessarily excitement, but raise a level of interest. If someone calls and their identity's been stolen and they're upset, kind of meet how they're acting with how, you know, you're going to help them and, you know, work on their problem with them. Two of the biggest issues that we consistently receive back as, you know, potential pain points between, again, that facilitation between someone with an issue and someone who can provide the assistance is, one, you know, telephone tag. You know, I can't get a hold of my attorney when I need to. They called me, left a message. I called them and leave a message. And just back to, my attorney may have been short with me, Rod, or they didn't listen to all of my concerns, or, you know, they didn't spend enough time explaining the service to me or explaining the potential outcomes or ways that I could solve my issues. And I mean, the cool thing about those are all issues that we can solve as a company, right? The members told us exactly what their pain points were. And it has nothing to do with the law, right? It has nothing to do with providing equal access to the justice system. It all has to do with kind of that facilitator position in the middle. How can we, you know, more easily and quickly connect the customer with the person providing the service? And then how can we make that member feel like they're being heard and listened to and service to the, you know, utmost of our ability, and then even to the utmost of the benefits that they've purchased through their monthly membership subscription with us.
Yeah, and so I like to call it it's the brand promise versus the brand delivery. Yep. And that's really what you're getting at. All right. You know, we have quite a few people that you know, connect with these, and sometimes it's we even have college students listening in, right up to individuals starting out their CX careers. And, you know, as I mentioned in the beginning, sort of providing good or even great customer experience should be easy. In a time, you know, in a sort of timeline, it starts with the organizational recognition that CX is important, and that's already been established within your organization. I know Matt was sort of at the forefront of that about a decade ago, and then, you know, all the way through to the completion of, hey, you know, we just finished this implementation and measurements are coming in and the scores look like we expect them to look. You know, where were the moments, you know, along that whole thing, you sort of this career advice kind of thing where you say, I got this. This is where I know we're doing right when it comes to CX. This is where I know I sold it in well with the organization, or I know we're delivering well for our customers.
Yeah.
Sam, you want to take that?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, like we said, we've been using other providers for a time. So really, our starting point of our timeline was we had a conversation with our previous provider, and we realized that like our goals for what we needed didn't match up with their goals for what their business was going. So there's kind of a discrepancy there. From there, I was tasked with finding a new provider that could meet these goals, and that had to do a lot with research and talking to a lot of different representatives from different companies, doing cost analysis, stuff like that. Then making my proposal to our chief legal officer who owns our program, and her making her proposal to our executive team and making that decision. And then from there, we kind of were able to sign a contract and get into the actual implementation process, which that's probably where I had yep, I got this moment, because man, I like math. I don't like talking to people. So I was done with all these interviews.
I'm with you there.
Yeah. And then implementation process, that was probably the most nerve-wracking part, because that's where data starts to go out finally, and you're working in between that. And I don't think I took a breath until we were fully integrated because I was so worried about messing it up.
Yeah, right, because Sam was kind of balancing the project between turning off the old and starting the new, right? So we had to make sure the new worked before we turned the old off, because again, we didn't want any gaps in our data.
Yeah, and yeah, there's a pain point there of our old provider. We've been there with them since 2015, and we had a process. This is how they went out. This is how they came back in this format, and we were able to upload it like this. And then QuestionPro is a different company, so they have a different process. So we didn't want to have to try to force them into our old way, but we didn't want to bring in the new data in a way that invalidates the last X amount of years that we've had. So working through all of that was a fun time. But yeah, I'd say the final, yep, I got this, the final breath was definitely on full implementation day, where everything sent out, and I checked our survey history and it showed deployed, and I was like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, I know I've been through quite a few of those. So, and Matt, anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, just again, kind of just a little bit bigger picture, and it's kind of back to that, yep, I got this question, or kind of that light bulb moment is, again, Sam and I are data geeks. We live in analytics, and that's where we would rather stay, right? So I can tell you probably the most exciting things from our perspective, right, is when, great, the surveys went out, the responses came in, wonderful. Sam's created member satisfaction scores against all these different variables. One of our main focuses as an analytics team here at LegalShield is not necessarily the data itself, but what's the actionable intelligence we can create with that information that then we can then pass on to management to create more value for the company. And probably the most exciting pieces of this project, right, is when we can analyze the customer service survey results. We can look at those responses we get back. We can do our analysis. We can make suggestions up to the business. The business can implement those suggestions. And then we can absolutely see member satisfaction scores going up, right? Sam talked about we can assign out specific trainings and learnings to our provider law firms based on where maybe they're not performing where we would like them to perform. They take those classes, we get the data back, member satisfaction scores have went up in those areas that we focused on. So that's really when I could step back and say, yep, this is certainly working for us, right? Because we could take that data that we received from those survey requests, we can push them into the business in ways that create more value, and then we can see those scores increase and change over time as we implement some of the learnings that we receive.
It's terrific to be able to see that, and it as Sam had said, watching all those little things, the numbers come together and, just build up those outcomes. And it's wonderful to watch.
It is, especially again, back to the very beginning of this, Rod. We create value for our company when members use the service, they're happy, and they stay long term. And our member satisfaction scores have an extremely high and strong correlation to membership retention. Membership retention creates value for us. So if we can make the members happy, we know that they stay with us longer, and we know that's creating value for everyone within our business.
Terrific. Well, I want to make sure I keep everyone on time. Thank you so much for joining me. I enjoyed the conversation. I wanted to check, AJ, did we have any questions that have come in?
Yes, we have a question from Pamela. So she wants to know if LegalShield has any matrix to assess improvement in listing by legal providers.
Yes, we do. That's one of the questions I talked about when we have a detractor score. We ask a set of questions, and one is specifically listening ability. We measure success of that. We have a process where we look at the date the course was taken, and we look at either the member satisfaction score and net promoter score within like 60 days before and 60 days after to see if that score improves. We don't specifically look at the listening score because we only ask it on detractor questions. So there's a skew there that doesn't make it necessarily relevant to just look at that score. But we do look at each, we have categories for these different questions we ask, and we do measure the success of those. And we've actually went through a couple of months ago when we found the ones that weren't performing well. We scrapped all those courses and remade all new ones to make sure that the quality of the information that we give is good. So long story short, yes.
Yeah, so, and again, so like I said, Sam created the member satisfaction scoring that we do internally, but, as a more industry standard, we also create and calculate a NPS or a net promoter score within the company. And that's kind of how we can dig down even deeper to Pamela's listening question and find out who may be getting a larger percentage of what we call detractor surveys or detractor customers, based upon their peers. And when someone has that larger percentage of those detractors, we can then dig down further and see, okay, why maybe was this person, why did this attorney create a potential detractor member? And also, and again, Sam hit on another good point. We have the trainings for our providers who are underperforming, but we also measure ourselves, right? Are the courses and are the trainings we creating, are they resulting in the outcomes that we expect them to, right? Are those, an attorney who takes a training, does that attorney, get better scores? And then we don't also just say, well, attorney, you took this class and you didn't get any better. Maybe the problem's you. We look internally at us, right? How could we have made that training better to where maybe that attorney would have gotten more out of it that would have resulted in a better member satisfaction score for our members.
Looks like we've had a few more come in.
Yes. So at the law firms that you work with, do they have someone who is the firm's CX evangelist, or do you work with individual attorneys?
So what we have is we have what we call account managers. So they're people on our side that work with usually the lead lawyer at each law firm, and they have a list of X amount of providers that they work with, and they dig through the data with them, kind of like you said, like the CX evangelist. So they're going to say, this month, here's your scores, here's where you struggled, here's how we can improve. So yeah, we have those three that work with each of our providers and have monthly meetings to ensure that they understand the data that's coming in. We also are moving more and more into like the Tableau sphere, so getting the data directly into our providers' hands. So now they can go in, and now that they understand the data, they've been working with these account managers, they can check themselves and they can see areas that they're struggling and areas that they're improving on their own and make adjustments as needed.
There's a few more. So Carl wants to know what your key CX metric is. Do you follow up with all your customers or just the detractors? And how receptive are the attorneys to the feedback you provide to them?
For the longest time, our key metric was NPS, like a lot of people use. But in the last year or so, we've looked to move more towards member satisfaction. We still use NPS as a sub-key metric almost, so we don't abandon it totally, but we've moved more and more towards member satisfaction, or most people call it like customer satisfaction. As for do we follow up with all customers or just detractors? Usually just detractors because they're the ones that had the issue with the experience. We do ask for comments at the end of the survey, and we ask if they'd be willing to do testimonials or stuff like that when they're more positive, so we can kind of understand their experience and use that maybe in marketing and stuff like that. But our expectation is for them to have a good experience. So we feel like when they have a good experience, we don't need to dig too much into it because that's what we expect. So yeah, mainly just the detractors in terms of understanding and improving our service.
Yeah, so perfect. And again, we survey all the members that utilize the service, and then we kind of have a matrix based upon, you know, what their score, what their responses are, what do we do next, right? Is it reach out to those people that give us the lowest scores to get more information, to learn how we can improve more? Or is it those folks that give us the highest and best scores, right? Are those our potential pool for testimonials that we can reach out to in order to, you know, help us market to more people like them?
And how about that question with regard? Are the attorneys really receptive to the feedback that you're giving them?
Yeah, I mean, they seem to. We've seen a lot of improvement with a lot of surveys. It kind of depends on the person and how well they receive constructive criticism, obviously. But we have it almost as a necessity. They're required to take courses, and they measure and hire and fire based on their performance. So we have a high standard, and we expect them to keep that high standard. So I would say they are receptive because it's part of our expectations for them.
For sure. And I mean, we can certainly always get into, you know, personality differences, into someone like being questioned or not. But again, we talked about it earlier on. All of our provider law firms are enumerated or paid based upon the active book of business in their areas of responsibility. So I would say all of our attorneys are extremely receptive on ways in which we've identified to increase member satisfaction, because they also know that increases membership retention, which they also know increases their checks at the end of every single month. So all of our provider law firms, and mostly down to every single attorney, fully understands this process. And if we're offering them a way to create more active members every single month, they're, you know, always fully willing and able to listen, right? I mean, whether they like their constructive feedback or not, that's a different question as to whether they're receptive into learning and creating more active members.
Yeah, no one likes to be criticized, but
right.
If they're open to it, it helps. So
well, and I mean, maybe criticized isn't the right word, right? Because we're certainly not criticizing them, but we are offering ways in which that they could increase those survey response scores they're getting back.
Terrific. I know we're running up against the clock and Matt has to jump off here. I want to thank everyone for participating, the questions that came in, but particularly Matt, Sam, it was a real pleasure. I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you for joining.
Hey, you know, you bet. I really enjoyed talking to you guys about this.
Yep.
All right, terrific. And everyone have a great day. Thank you.